In the following video lessons, you will learn how to make your RESTful web service application communicate with the database using Java Persistence Query Language. Java Persistence Query Language is also called JPQL for short, and I would say its biggest advantage over writing native SQL queries is that JPQL is platform independent. If today your project uses a MySQL database and one day you decide to use a different database, you will not need to rework your JPQL queries because they're not dependent on the database vendor. So the JPQL queries you write for MySQL database should work if one day you decide to switch to an Oracle database. Let's assume we have the following entity class in our project. When we want to store user details into a database, we will create an instance of this user entity class, set user details, and then we'll persist this user entity object into a database. And when we need to read user details from a database, the SQL query we write will return an object of user entity class. So when we write queries using Java Persistence Query Language, in the query we use entity class details rather than database table details. For example, let's assume we need to write a query that selects user first name and user last name from a database where user ID is equal to some value. In the query that we will write, we will select from, and then instead of using database table name, we will use the entity class name, which is in our case user entity. Also, in this query, we are selecting first name and last name only. If we were writing a native SQL query, this would need to be database column names. But because we are writing a JPQL query, the first name and the last name should be the names of the class fields in our user entity class. Alright, so let's open our development environment and let's create a few JPQL queries.